can you tell us what is this world record you're trying to break? Like, give us the idea of what you're setting out to do. Just tell us.
Okay, well, to start off with, I have to say that these days in the adventure world, it's almost impossible to do a world first with an expedition. People that are setting records, it's either the fastest or the youngest person or the first Australian, things like that.
Right.
But there are almost no trips on Earth that haven't been done in any capacity. It's basically South Pole in winter, which will never be done, K2 in winter, which will probably never be done, and then the other really big one is the Brooks Range in winter, which I was the first person to ever attempt in 2014, and since then there have been 2 other attempts in the expedition, both unsuccessful.
So this is you've done 4 attempts.
So the summer traverse.
Yes.
Just 4 attempts.
Yes.
Before I was successful.
Yes.
And now I've had 1 attempt at the winter traverse, which has never been done. I was the first person to ever try it.
Yes.
And there's been 2 other people that have, 2 other expeditions that have tried it since then, and my plan is to go back for the second attempt at the winter traverse.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about where is this place? Where is that? What's the terrain looks like? It takes us there.
So the Brooks Range, it's in Arctic Alaska. Mm-hmm. So it goes from the Canadian border all the way across to the west coast of Alaska. The whole thing's inside the Arctic.
Yes.
The mountain range is about 1,000 miles long with the expedition. In summer it was 1,000 kilometers of hiking and 600 kilometers of paddling a kayak. But in winter the expedition will be entirely on skis, pulling sleds.
Yes.
As it's in the Arctic, no sunlight.
Yes.
We'll have about 5 hours at twilight a day, and the rest of the time we'll be skiing in the dark. There'll be wolves, moose, caribou, wolverines, Arctic foxes that become rabid in winter and will try and attack you. The northern lights will be out every week. We'll go through a couple of Eskimo villages, but apart from that, it'll be complete isolation.
And why is that so attractive to you? Why would you like to do something like this?
There's nowhere on Earth like Alaska, but in particular the Brooks Range. There are countries that have big mountains and animals and isolation, but there's nowhere that has the combination of those 3. In one day on the summer traverse, I saw 6 grizzlies in one day, and I was about 400 kilometers from the nearest road. I was completely alone. And the mountains are actually the biggest on Earth. So Everest is only 3,000 and a bit meters high from base to summit, whereas Denali is over 5,000 meters high. So Everest starts at a really high altitude. So the mountains in Alaska, even though they're not the highest in altitude, they're actually the biggest mountains on Earth.
Right.
So the place is just so immense and really makes you feel small.
Oh, wow. Wow. And what I love about meeting you is often in our lives we think that, this guy's over there in Alaska and so on. But people that are going through businesses and their business expanding and they actually literally don't know what to do next, that's a huge mountain. They have to traverse it very fast. And the bears, they may be friendly, they are opportunities or people that are come to try to take them out or just observing them. So the analogies can really be drawn, right? And I notice from the people that have met you, or I notice from the people that watched your videos and so on, that they immediately start relating their personal journey, like their personal mountains, their personal journey, and the joys as well of actually conquering the next step and the next step. And that's why I loved the idea of interviewing you, because people can draw so many parallels from what you were doing. So I would love to just talk a little bit, because you're successful in doing it on your 4th attempt during summer, right? Mm-hmm. So for those of you who are watching, whatever it is in your life right now that maybe what's exciting you, what's if you may have a huge project you're tackling, and the truth is you've never done it before. Let's just hang out with John for a second and tap into his heart, into his tenacity, his ability to lean in and not give up. As you can draw some experiences and also some know-how, whatever it is that you're going through in life, you can draw experience from this adventurer that can teach you to enjoy the adventure of your life. So John, talk to me about when let's really go back to when it was just an idea, right? And you talk about earning the right, to actually achieve a goal. Like what am I getting ready for? So taking me through your preparation, right?
Yeah.
So you had the idea, then what happened?
I was at university studying film. I'd never hiked in the wilderness. I'd never used a map and compass. I'd never been by myself, and I read this book, and it just inspired me to go to Alaska on the spot. And I dropped out of university and planned on. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew it was going to be by myself. It was going to be in the wilderness. It was going to be dangerous, and I just set off. And I was very naive, it was a big learning curve. I did a 75-day wilderness course, and then the following year attempted the summer traverse of the Brooks Range, and was helicopter rescued on the 4th day. Spent a whole nother year training.
So hold on a second. You see, when we listen to this story quickly, for those of you that are entrepreneurial and you just had an idea and then suddenly you sold your house to put all your money into that idea, I want to encourage you. You're not as crazy as everybody else thinks you are. He's a guy who says to you, I was at university studying film, in a wonderful country called Australia, and then I had an idea. I dropped everything. I love it. I dropped everything. It's like, I'll do it. And then, get this is good. So for those of you right now that took I don't know what happened for you, but you took a promotion and now you're being promoted to a level. And we're talking about senior guys now that are in their 50s. If you're 50 years old right now and you don't understand social media and you're pretending that you do, you can learn a lot from what John's about to say, right? You can learn a lot from what John's about to say, because you are about to face some stuff that you have no idea how it operates. I relate to that personally, very close to, right? So whatever it is that your challenge is, let's go back into the detail of the detail. So you spent a long time preparing.
Yeah.
And then you got there. And then 4 days later, it was over.
Yeah, well, it's a 2-month expedition, and because it's the Arctic, there's only 3 months that you can do this a year. So I did the course in summer, trained for a whole year.
Yes.
Then 4 days in, helicopter rescued, dreams over.
4 days in, and you are on that trip, on that helicopter, being pulled out, right?
Yeah.
Tell us how you felt.
My world was over.
Yeah.
I just remember lying in the helicopter and kind of watching the Brooks Range disappear beneath me. And when you're so caught up in the moment and the devastation, I was thinking, I'm never going to come back. This is over, and I'm never going to get a chance to try this again. So yeah, it was tough.
Can you tell me your internal dialogue, or when did it happen for you that you said to yourself, "No, I'm going to do it again"?
It's probably about a week.
A week later.
After being back home.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So boom, knock on the head, your tail splat down, but then you said, I've got to get up.
Yeah.
Then a week later, you said, I'm going to do it again.
I fall pretty hard, but I pick myself up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a bad week when I was back. But
yeah. Tell us about this. When you start telling people you're going to do it again, what was the feedback?
Oh, it's dreadful. I mean, I was living in a small town in Queensland, and everyone knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
So, I say, I leave and I'm like, goodbye, I'm not going to see you for months because I'm going to be doing this trip and I'm going to be successful. I'm 22 years old, I'm confident, cocky, and then suddenly I'm back in town a week later. People are like, what happened, So, and then when I say I'm going back, it's just, they're laughing at me, and I trained for a whole year, I prepared, I had chronic injuries and anxiety and all these other things that I was trying to get through, but I was still confident that I was going to succeed, because at that point I still didn't really know what it was to work hard and to earn that desire. It's so easy to convince yourself that you want something more than anything. You hear sports stars in particular, they're always like, yeah, we want to win more than any other team. It's like, well, someone's got to want to win more than someone else. It doesn't work that way. And so often you see teams or people, they win one year and the next year they suck. It's because they don't have that desire, because they've got the trophy. They're no longer trying to get something that they've never experienced. It's like, well, I want it again, but I've already got it once, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Whereas, you don't want to come up against someone that lost in the grand final the year before because they want it more than anyone else.
So as you look at this interview and start to listen, I know in your life right now, there are things that you are declaring, there are things that you are chasing, you're going there, and if there's no pushback, maybe you could be playing a bigger game. So imagine once at 22 and use some words like, and then you had injuries and you had people telling you not to do it, and and you spent a lot of time in training, but I guess also in raising money, awareness.
Yeah, I funded it all myself in the early days. I didn't get any sponsorship, so I was working at a restaurant as a waiter for 5-6 days a week, and then training during the day. Like every food drop, like to get a bush plane to fly me into the wilderness, was thousands and thousands of dollars. I spent a huge amount of money that I earned working in a restaurant.
Right. How long did it take for you from first attempt to second attempt? So how long later was your second attempt?
So it was the same time of year every year, because it had to be.
Yeah. You have a window. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it was basically a year.
Yeah.
Between each one.
And tell us about what happened at the second attempt.
The second attempt, I started having really bad panic attacks.
And you were panicking about what?
Yeah, who knows?
But you were thinking like the bear gonna eat me, or you're thinking like, oh shit, I'm not gonna make it again.
The first one happened lying in bed the night before flying to Alaska for the second attempt, and I'd never had a panic attack in my life. And then all of a sudden, my world's crashing, and it's not like there's one thing that's kind of going through your head. It's just that everything's going through your head.
Yes.
Looking back on it, it was primarily the fear of failure was the sort of front and center thing that I was stressing about. But obviously, fear is a prehistoric thing. So my body would have been just terrified of dying and getting eaten by bears or drowning in a river or whatever else. So it was a combination of the fear of failure and the fear of death.
Yes.
And
right, panic attack. A couple of things come to mind about panic attack.
Have you had them?
Oh man, they're awesome.
Oh,
they're awful. they're horrid, but they're awesome. Like we're talking like But you see, I reckon most people have mini panic attacks often.
Mini, yeah.
But they don't know how to relate. It's like when you go to the edge, like the panic attack is just like, it's, as you said, it's just most your mind is opening, all the channels of your mind all at once. And suddenly people start to then talk about brain capacity, that we operate at 10% brain capacity. And during a panic attack, what actually happens is the brain starts to open other pathways in order to handle it. Chemically, we go out of balance, and that's a dangerous part because we are a chemical soup. But if you can actually breathe and recover from the panic attack and actually start looking at it from a helicopter perspective, and I know you've done this. I know you've done this because during the panic attack, it's like, right? Paralyzed.
You'll die.
But you actually did it. You went back, and you went back, and you went back. So when people are watching this, and there's so many people now watching having panic attacks, during the dark hour of the panic attack, it's awful. But if you can actually manage it, and I would love to draw this from you, right? So tell me, brother, how did you manage the panic attack and show up, and you did it?
Well, the second and third failures were primarily because of my anxiety, my panic attacks.
Yeah.
And where I went wrong is that I was trying to eliminate my anxiety. And I viewed my anxiety as a really terrible thing. Like, my body's telling me that I shouldn't be going there, and I'm not ready, and I'm not good enough, and all of these things. And after the third failure, I stepped away from the Brooks Range with no immediate plans to return. And at a certain point, I sort of sat down and I said to myself, I can't traverse the Brooks Range. What do I have to do to be able to do it? And I accepted that I wasn't good enough, but that didn't mean I couldn't become good enough. And I looked at my anxiety and I realized that it was perfectly natural. It wasn't a bad thing. It was a good thing in a sense. It was helping me prepare. It was making me realize that what I was trying to do was pretty enormous.
Yeah.
It was, and I don't think I quite appreciated that in the early days. It was just an adventure, an expedition that I was going to be successful in.
And I call this permission to become the greater self. Right? So you suddenly start to have a dialogue with yourself. So in the stickman theory, right, it's the greater John now that is calling to exist. And you haven't been yet the guy who did it. But this future you starts to talk to present you. Fair enough. Here's the panic attacks, here's all of this. And present you saying, I'm not good enough. But greater you saying, what do I have to do? And for the person watching in this, what you're actually giving people right now in this interview is code. Like programming code. You know, as an ability that as we interview and for the wisdom that starts to happen in this space of this interview, is people start to get, oh, so he failed the first time, he failed the second time, and start to have real panic attacks, and yet he showed up again, put his boots on, his jacket on, his skis on, and off he went. Hold on a second. It's because of those internal dialogues, right? Because I failed, I'm not good enough. What do I need to do to be good enough? You see the bridge? What do I have to do? This tenacity not to give up. And I truly believe that in human nature, we actually design not to give up. And perhaps is the panic attacks that compresses us, paralyzes us, but the greater version of us may call. But there is also the smaller version of us. So even this present you, greater you, smaller you. The smaller you is calling, give up. You're not good enough, as well as the same, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about the fourth attempt.
So a week before leaving for the fourth attempt, I was still working in a restaurant because I had to pay for it all.
Uh-huh.
And,
so what did you do at the restaurant?
Bartending, waiting.
So you're telling me that this guy who sees bears, right? So anyone passing by the restaurant that day sees you coming in, good morning, what would you like? That's like, it's a good looking young man. People just talking to you. I feel like, oh, I have a dream, right? I have something pulsating inside of me, yeah? And he's trying to relate, like, you are the waiter who's going to put yourself through the mountain range again? Yeah.
But I said to the head chef, it was my last night at work, and I was like, see you later, I'm off to Alaska again. And he's like, oh, so I'll see you next week.
Is that right?
That's what he said. Because he'd seen me leave 3 times before. Yes, I'm going to be gone for months, and then 2 weeks later I'm back.
And you went totally by yourself?
Completely, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So and then what happened? Then you went?
For the fourth attempt, I talked a lot less to people. I stopped telling people I was going to be successful because I was sick. I was sick of saying I was going to be successful and saying I was going to do this. I just wanted to act.
Got it.
Time for talking was over.
Yes.
And so I was a lot more internal for the fourth attempt. I was no longer trying to eliminate my anxiety. I was just managing it, dealing with it, accepting that it was going to be there. Mm-hmm. And it's just very driven, like I'd never been driven before.
Wonderful. And how long did it take?
The expedition, 31 and a half days.
31 and a half days.
It was meant to take 2 months, but
You smashed it.
Yeah. I mean, so only 4 people had done this solo before me, and then there'd been a couple of groups of 2, and only one person had ever done it in under 2 months. So, and he's the greatest long distance hiker in the world. So naturally, in planning the expedition, I thought I would be like the other guys,
yes,
and it would take roughly 2 months.
Yes, got it.
And I ended up averaging 52 kilometers a day for the hiking section and 93 kilometers a day for the kayaking section. And that included being stuck for 3 days waiting for a food drop to arrive.
Right.
So, yeah, it was unexpected, but I completely smashed the speed record without even knowing what the speed record was. I wasn't trying to do it.
Oh, right. Oh, beautiful.
I think it was fear. I was just so terrified the whole time. And in the range, you've got your start and your finish, and you've got the road smack bang in the middle. But there's certain points where little bush planes can land. It's not a runway, it's just a flat grass area here or a gravel bar there. And you feel a tiny bit of safety at those points because you at least know that a bush plane, if the weather's good, can land there.
Right.
So in between those places is just terrifying. And you're
Yes.
constantly wanting to get to the next point of tiny bit of safety. And I think that was one of the reasons that I moved so quickly, because I was just so terrified the whole time.
Tell us a little bit about the detail. Like, how did you set up camp? Like, did you sleep every night? Did you push it through the night? Or how many hours how long did it take for you to set up camp, get in the tent, sleep, then in the morning, pack and go?
So I would hike for about 12 to 14, sometimes 19 hours a day.
Right.
It would take 50 minutes from the moment I stopped hiking to when I was in bed.
Right.
And that includes cooking dinner, eating dinner, setting up the tents, charging my iPod and camera with a solar panel, all the things I needed to do. Everything was timed out to perfection.
Right.
I'd set up this, and then I'd leave the water boiling while I'm doing this, and then I'd put the water in there, and then I'd send the sat phone message, and everything was just perfect.
Right.
And in the mornings it was about 15 minutes.
So this is a very different John from the John that was at filming school thinking, I'm going to do this, right? This John now that can do all of this in 50 minutes, right, is somebody else than the original John, yeah? It's like, you have come a long way. The mountain, and you can see the application of that for your corporate life, for the rest of your life, yeah? The ability to actually then be able to be looking at a deal, concentrating on the outcome for your customer, for whoever it is that you're representing. In the background, checking all the laws and all the precedents, right?
Well, just before I came here today, I got an email from the project manager accusing me of being on steroids because of how much work I'm getting through.
Yes.
And in law, it's got nothing to do with adventuring.
Yeah.
But my adventuring taught me how to be efficient. It taught me how to work hard. It taught me how to want something. And even though, I like law, I'm not immensely passionate about it, but I enjoy it as a career.
Yeah.
But I've now learned how to work hard.
Yeah.
And so even when I'm not, the Brooks Range is everything to me. It's my paradise.
Yes.
I'm never going to want anything as much as I want that. But because I've understood how you can want something that much, I can now bring that into other areas of my life.